Hey, so my name is TJ. I'm a person in long-term recovery. I'm here hosting the Recovery Matters podcast with...
My name is Danny. I'm a person in long-term recovery as well. My sobriety date is February 17th, 2021. So I just passed my 4-year anniversary recently, and I'm glad to be here with you. Thanks for having me, TJ.
Yeah, dude, thank you very much, and congratulations. It's awesome.
Thank you.
It's a big accomplishment. Is that the longest you've ever been sober in your life?
That's the longest I've been sober in my life since I started using, yes.
Okay. Tell me about your early life. What was that like?
Early life, sheltered, right? Couldn't really do much, couldn't go anywhere. Had both my parents in my life and one sister that I grew up with. I have 4 additional sisters and 2 brothers, but I did not grow up with them. Good. I went to school, came home, played in the yard. I remember having a big wheel, my bicycle, just doing what we did back in the mid-90s.
Yep.
Back when it was good, yeah.
Yeah, dude. So when did you get into drugs and alcohol?
So I had my first taste of marijuana when I was 13, and I don't think I had inhaled my first time.
Okay.
So I thought I was cool. I thought, I could do this. I smoke now. Just going into my freshman year in high school, and I end up hanging out with a friend, and I'm like, hey, I got some weed. I'm coming over. Roll it up. I'll spark you up. So we get there, and I'm smoking with her, and she's like, hey, man. She's like, you're not inhaling. I'm like, what do you mean I'm not inhaling? She's like, do this. She showed me. So I did it. I thought I was a champ. We finished the whole blunt or joint, whatever it was, and then I freaked out and lost it, man. Just freaked out, so.
Oh, yeah. I remember, I think for me, it was really that summer between 8th grade and freshman year where, like, things really took off, right?
That's where everything took off for me.
It's that developmental year. You're getting into girls. You're like, oh, I'm going to be in high school now. That was like the time.
Absolutely. We thought we were grown,
Yep.
independent adults and could do whatever we wanted.
And then, obviously it kind of led into things. So you smoke weed for the first time. You have a panic attack. Things settle down. What goes through your mind?
I actually remember that day I had got home at like 6 p.m. and I was trying to avoid my father, right? Because I didn't want him to know that I was high. Went upstairs and I probably went to bed. I remember laying in the bed and the bed just like sinking. And I'm like, oh man, I'm falling. What's going on here? Never experienced that. Heart's racing. And I went to sleep. I don't know what time it was, but I woke up the next day for school and I still didn't feel right. I was like, what is going on? And I didn't touch it again for like 2 years.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a bad experience. So I was like, no way.
Did you get into alcohol right then?
No, so alcohol was around the age of 13 as well.
Okay.
It was just a cool thing to do. And I mean, we were drinking Dubra, Boone's Farm, everything that was cheap. I'm sure you drink it too, so.
Oh, yeah. That was the go-to. I got so sick. So it was like one of the first real times I ever got drunk. I was probably like 15. A bunch of friends got a huge thing of orange juice, Dubra, and I got so sick. And like my buddy's stepdad who bought it for us was like, you guys need to take it easy, drink slow. And I'm just sick.
Savage.
And he was pissed. He's like, I'm never letting any of you drink at this house ever again. And then everybody's mad at me and like, but it also ruined alcohol for a while. This experience probably ruined weed for a while, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And so that's all I did mostly throughout my teenage years was just drink because and even when I did return to smoking weed, it was 2 hits and I'm done, right? Because I'm not trying to experience that again. So it was mostly alcohol, but I also didn't abuse it that much, right? It was we're hanging out, it's Friday night, or we had a day for a name for every day of the week. So like Thirsty Thursday, Freaky Friday, and so on and so forth. So it was mostly weekend stuff. At that time, there was a bar in Willimantic called Corleone's, and I think they had 50-cent pitchers on Thursday nights. And we would hop the fence to get into the back, and we would drink all night. We would get torn up, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Crazy times.
When did it really take off for you?
When it actually really took off, I'd say when my mother died. I was
Okay.
22. I had never gotten into anything hard or heavy more than marijuana and alcohol. I was a mama's boy, right? I love my mom, miss her to this day. And when she passed, I feel like I have nobody to behave for, right? Like I'm nobody to impress. Granted, I had my kid, but I was so stressed out with her death and not knowing how to cope. that I turned to drugs and alcohol and stuff. So that was around the age of 22. At the age of 22, I did my first bump of cocaine. Never really got into it heavy, but it did happen, on a every other month basis, whatnot. Again, marijuana wasn't a thing, and alcohol was. But what really took off for me were the Percocets.
Okay, how'd you get into that?
So when my mom was dying, she had cancer, pancreatic cancer, and so she had a ton of Percocets, and they were the real deal Holyfields.
Oh yeah.
And she had a lot. So when she went into hospice and she got hospitalized, that was all left at home. And that was my way to cope,
Yep.
with what she was going through, going to the hospital every day, seeing my mother dying, knowing that she's about to die, and knowing that this is the only thing that makes me feel better right now.
Yeah, them old school blueberries.
The blueberries, yep.
Yep.
The 15s, the Roxys.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it kind of took off, huh?
It did, absolutely took off. So I was functioning while taking Percocets for 5 years.
Yep.
I was a chef. And everything was good, right? My bills were paid. I had a girl. I was taking care of my kid. I had my place. I had my vehicle. I had everything. Nothing crazy, not getting in trouble. I had injured my back. So I had taken some time off, and I had herniated a few discs. So now I'm going to pain management. And they're like, well, we got shots, and we got pills, and we got this. And I was like, no, no shots. Let's go with the pills. So I remember getting like 120 10 milligram Perc 10s. And then the prescription just increased, right, over the months. And then he's like, oh, now take these oxys too. And when that's not doing it for you, take this oxy. So that really, I took off with that. But again, it was never like a huge issue. Yeah, I was spending a lot of money I shouldn't have on it. But everything else was taken care of. So I was justifying it, right? I go to my doctor one day. I know I have a problem. And I'm like, Doc, there's a problem. Red flag me, do whatever you gotta do. Take me off this medication because I'm messing up, right? I'm abusing it. You're giving me a prescription on Thursday, and by Monday it's gone. I'm buying in the streets. He's like, all right, I got you. And he says, I'm gonna write you a script for something. He's like, lock yourself in your bedroom for the weekend, 3 days, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And every time you feel like crap, take one of these. I didn't know what one of these were, right? But I was taking them. They were Xanax 1 milligram pills. And so now just created a whole nother monster. I'm just like, oh, well, I don't have to do that no more. I could feel like this and do this. I didn't know what I was getting myself into. So, yeah, that just spiraled completely out of control. And I wasn't as productive on Xanax than I was with the Xanax. I wasn't, with the Percocets. I was not paying my bills, right? I was not being a good father. And I would black out, right? I would take a whole bunch and not realize what I did after I had taken.
You were an angry Xanax guy?
No, not really. A crazy Xanax guy.
Okay.
A blackout, thought I was invisible and invincible. Absolutely.
Yeah, so I got a lot of similarities to your story. So I always worked in the food service industry. As long as I could stand up straight, I could cook. No problem. You're good,
Yeah.
And like felons and all that, right? It fit right in perfect. And with Xanax was tough. I got into Xanax earlier before opiates, but once I tasted opiates for the first time, it was like, I remember like one of the first real times I dabbled a little bit. I knew what they were, kind of. I broke my arm. I swung at my brother, missed, hit the corner of the wall, broke my fourth and fifth metacarpal in my hand, went to the doctor, broken. And he's like, how bad does it hurt? I was like, really hurts. He's like, oh, we'll fix that right up, no problem. Scripted 97.5s to a 15-year-old.
Wow.
When my dad's like, yep, we'll pick him up. And then we get home. And my dad's giving them to my mom because they were divorced. And he's like, hey, my back is killing me from, shoveling snow. And she gets pissed at him. She's like, really? Every time we get one of these, you got, So I'm sitting there like watching it.
Yeah, the interaction.
Watching it happen, right? And I see what he's doing, and I'm like, these got to be good, dude. Like, these got to be, like... So, she gives him a couple. He shuts up. I'm like, she goes downstairs to do laundry. They're sitting in her purse. Take half of them, put them in my pocket. Took like 4 or 5 of them.
At the age of 15?
Oh, yeah. I was cooked.
It's crazy.
And then that was like the first real like nodding out experience. Like, wow, like this is what I've been looking for,
That escape. That nod. I hear you.
And you just know it's a problem. Like, that you shouldn't be doing it, but you can't help yourself.
Right. So, right, I grew up in Willimantic, right, in public housing,
Yep.
and growing up, right, I'd sit in my window and I'd watch people shoot up in their car. Like they'd park in front of my house, walk up to the spot, cop, come back, shoot up in the car, nod out, overdose, whatever the case may be. And so, like, I was really mindful of that, and I was always like, I'll never touch that stuff. You know, like I'll never do it. And by the grace of God, to this day, I never touched anything more than pills, right? As far as
Wow.
heroin, fentanyl, I never touched it. I've never smoked crack,
Wow.
none of that, those things. But it's because I know myself too, because I know that when I love something, nothing's gonna keep me from that.
Yes.
So I knew that if I did heroin or fentanyl and I loved it, that was it. I mean, look at what the Xanax did to me. Imagine something,
Yeah.
so much stronger than that.
Yeah, dude, you're like that is so like you're so lucky because for me like it happened more at like 16. I forget what had happened. I lost touch with a friend or whatever, and then he came around and I was working at this place and he stops by. He's like looking real weird and like nobody just shows up to my work, and he's like, "Hey, remember the Percocets?" Blah blah blah. We were sniffing. I was like, "Yeah, whatever. Like I like Percocets." And he's like, "We're gonna do this is what I'm doing now." I'm like, what? And he's like, it's dope. And I'm like, dude, you're crazy. He's like, listen, it's the same thing. Blah, blah, blah. Bags are $5. A bag is basically like a perk 30. I'm like, wasn't sold right away,
Right.
but it sat in the back of my head. And I knew
Yeah,
that,
when
like,
somebody tells you something is $5 compared to the 30 you're paying for that perk 30, you start to consider, I'm saving money, what's this gonna do for me? Absolutely.
boom, one bag, it was done. And I was like, all right, I'll give it a rip. Boom. Oh, you don't got to shoot it up, whatever. You could just sniff it. And it was like, whew, gone.
Yeah. And how old were you when you started?
16,
Wow.
17, maybe somewhere between 16 and 17. It's hard because you mess up because like there's so much going on in your life. You kind of mess up your timeline from time to time, but
That's young though, that's very young.
yeah,
And now I see why you're in the young person's program here, right? Because you have that experience, that life experience.
yeah.
Thank you for doing that, because I feel like that younger population needs help and needs support, and you don't see it in a lot of places. So, yeah.
Well, yeah, I got sober at 22, right? And I didn't want to stay sober either because a lot of people are like, how'd you get sober? It's like, well, luck of the draw, I burned it down as quick as possible.
Yeah, right.
I had no other option but recovery, and I was like, I'm gonna work it hard enough to sell it to everybody. And when they buy it and they take their eyes off me, I'll drink again. I'll never do those heroin or cocaine or any of that stuff ever again. And I sat in the groups, I sat in the meetings, I sat in whatever, and then whatever happened, I really think it was the inner work, on myself, and it was like, boom. One day I woke up and it just wasn't my thought. It was like maybe recovery isn't so bad. It wasn't like, well, I'm going to swear this off for life. It was like, recovery's not so bad. I might enjoy being sober today, and
That's awesome.
you know,
That's a pretty young age. Granted, you started at an early age, but to be in recovery at 22, most people aren't ready at that age. Whether they have a choice or not, right? Court mandated, or
Yeah.
you need to for your health. People don't have that willpower, so big ups for that.
Thank you. When did you get your first taste of recovery?
My first taste of recovery, honestly, from the time that I started, like I had gone to like detoxes a couple times, right? Like I was always mindful that I had a problem and I needed help. I always hid it very well. Nobody knew what I was doing. So I remember checking into, I think, SCAD New London one time, and I was there for detox. I was there for 2 nights, I believe. And the lady on third shift was like, "What are you doing here? You don't have any symptoms. You're not withdrawing. Like, you sure you're addicted?" And I was like, you know what? I don't think I'm addicted. Sign me out. 3 a.m. I'm calling my girl at the time, and I'm like, "Come pick me up in New London." She's all the way almost out this way. And she's like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "Come pick me up right now." She picked me up, brought me back home. I think we got back at like 5 a.m. By 7 a.m, I had already gone and copped some pills
Yep.
from my plug. I was like, yo, the lady's a professional. She works there. She said, I don't have a problem. I'm not withdrawing. So guess what? I'm going right back to it. But it's just, you're in denial. You're not ready to stop. So,
Yeah.
but my first actual taste of recovery wasn't until I was incarcerated at the age of 28.
Okay.
That's the longest period I've had of sobriety. And I think it was sufficient amount of time, right? It was 7 years. And then 7 years, even in those 7 years, I messed up, right? Because in prison, I was doing Suboxone. That's why. my sobriety, I've only been clean for 4 years because I was doing Suboxone in the facilities and stuff.
Dabbling.
Yeah. And I remember for my 30th or 31st birthday, I did some Suboxone and I was in the prison. Somebody told on me and said that, I was getting high. So the next morning they came and they grabbed me. My family's going to kill me after they watch this because I don't think they know this. But yeah, so I got scooped up and I was in seg.
Yep.
And I was up there stressing and there by myself. I think it was cold. I was hungry, like, jumpsuit, no, nothing up there. And I'm like, damn, dude, if you can't get your shit together while you're in here, like, you're never going to get it out there. And that day I was like, you know what? I don't want to spend time in seg alone. Like, that shit mentally breaks you.
Yes.
And I don't want to do this anymore. And by the grace of God, I haven't picked up since that day.
That's amazing.
So, yeah.
And you were sitting there, you knew it, right?
Yeah, I was just tired, right? Because every time I got high or did anything with drugs, it led me to trouble. And like when you're in jail, going to jail, in jail,
yeah, you're in the jail within the jail.
What's after that? Like they're gonna bury you in it.
Yeah.
Like you gotta get your stuff together. It's time to grow up, man up, admit you got a problem, own everything you've done, right? Accept responsibility, learn coping skills, try something different. Get uncomfortable. Yep. And I did all those things and it wasn't easy. But that's why I'm where I'm at today.
What led you to getting incarcerated?
First arrest was impersonating a police officer. Basically, I had this crazy Xanax addiction and I knew that there was Xanax at a specific location, specific place. And, I'm ashamed of it. I'm embarrassed, right? But I went, acted like I was a cop and was intimidating that person into giving me what they had at the house. And like I didn't get caught for that in the act immediately. That was a warrant that came out later, and I got caught up for that. So I got arrested. I bonded out. And right, I'm new to the criminal justice system because I had no prior arrest prior to this.
Yep.
So I'm like, oh, I'm bonded out. Well, so what do? I go out and I do more stupid stuff. Committed a burglary. I broke into a house and I stole, property and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
To feed my addiction. Credit card theft. Somebody literally slid me a card and was like, here you go, use it for whatever you want. Let's go. And I did. You don't think about the consequences. You don't care. You just know that like you have this addiction and all your money's going to it. And if you have to use a stolen credit card for something else, then you're going to do it, So we got those. So there was a charge of criminal impersonation of a doctor. So I had called the pharmacy and acted like I was a doctor and received a prescription. It actually worked, which is kind of scary, right? That they didn't have enough to convict me on, so they ended up dropping that. And then I have a robbery in the 3rd degree where I robbed a random person. So that night, I actually remember I had popped 18 Xanny bars that day.
Oh, my God.
Right, so I woke up, it was like 9 a.m., and I started, boom, boom. And I just remember being miserable, right? Being absolutely miserable, not liking like my living situation, just not happy with anything in my life, still not coping with my mother's death because I didn't know how to cope. And I literally had a death wish that night, right? I was on a suicide mission. I truly wanted to die. And that night I robbed the first random person who came across me, right? It could have been you that night. It could have been you watching. It could have been anybody. But unfortunately, right, it was somebody who didn't deserve it.
Yep.
It was a completely innocent person going about their daily life. And it was selfish of me, of course. But my hope and my wish at that time was that whoever I robbed was going to pull out on me and just shoot me and just take me out of my misery. Because I didn't care if I went to jail. I didn't care if I died. That's the point I was in my life. Like to be sick, like craving this drug and then getting it and feeling normal. And then that instant regret hits you and you just feel like the biggest piece of shit in the world, right? Because you're like, I'm freaking spending my money on this. And, it was just torture, and I literally wanted out of this world.
Yes.
And today, I'm glad that didn't happen, right? I'm glad that I spent the time I did in prison and I'm not 6 feet under, so.
Yeah, God did for you what you couldn't do for yourself.
Absolutely. I really got introduced to recovery at Robinson, where I was the mentor. One of the counselors was like, I'm signing you up for Recovery Coach Academy. I'm like, what is that? And she's just like, I'm signing you up. It starts February 1st. I remember being irritated because I was watching court TV trial or something, some
Yeah.
crazy stuff. I just wanted to lay on the bunk. And so I wasn't going to do it. And then I went the first day, the second day, and then I think I was going to withdraw and be like, I don't want to do this. But I wrote it out and I stayed. So that's where I did the Recovery Coach Academy. And then many months later, I did ethical considerations
Okay.
and, you know, learning about CCAR. And this isn't just because I work here. This is like true story. The more I learned about CCAR and recovery, the more I'm like, oh God, you know, like I have a problem and this is what I can do about it. This is where I can go. And when you start learning things and how to utilize those things properly, you know, your toolbox, whatever you want to call it, then you're in recovery, right? Because now you know what to do when you're triggered or when you're craving, whatever. When you don't know what to do when you're going through those things, it's hard, right? So
Yeah.
that was my first taste of recovery.
That's really, really cool. And then you got out and you were like, I know I want to stay sober.
Yeah, absolutely, right? Because I knew that if I came out and I didn't stay sober, I'm a parolee. I'm going right back to jail.
Yep.
I did not want to do that. I have a 14-year-old son, my pride and joy, right? I love that kid with everything I have. Highly disappointed in myself for my decisions, right? For being away from him for so long. But all I could do is not do it again.
Yes.
So I come out here. Drugs are not an option for me today, right? Like getting messed up, substances, it doesn't cross my mind. It's not an option. I remember my first trigger after being home. I was on the bus out here in Hartford, and I was in the seat, and I was staring at a pill on the floor on the bus. But I had no desire to use the pill, but I wanted to know what the number on it was.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting on the bus, and I'm like, you're going to look crazy if you pick up this pill, right? Just to look. I wasn't going to do it, but it literally, I was sitting there like, yo, pick up the pill, look at the number. Just wanted to know what it was.
Oh, yeah.
Ignored it, right? Never touched it. But besides that, I truly have no desire to use today, man. Like life is great. I come to work, I go home, talk to my kid, my family as well. I just went to Florida last month. I'm going again next week. So just recovery's got great rewards. I have a great job. And I get to be around people who've lived similar experiences to me, you know, and also in recovery. And the people I talk to and work with in the community, as far as participants taking training or people who come here to the center, they motivate me, right, to do better and to keep doing this. So, yeah.
If you had to give somebody in recovery some type of insight, support, whatever, somebody experiencing recovery for the first time or somebody in recovery for their first day, what would you say to them?
Not to give up. I feel like your first days or weeks or even months, right, is when you most want to be like, nah, I'm going back. I'm turning back, doing this. Do what feels right for you.
Yep.
And, you know, you're going to have people saying, oh, why are you stopping now? You're no fun. You know, you're a quitter, whatever the case may be. Like, don't listen to anybody. Follow your heart. Because people who don't know what you're going through can't give you good advice, right? So, you gotta be mindful and weary of who you listen to and take advice from.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you very much.